You're live. Okay, it's the time of the day when I absolutely hate doing videos because the sun starts to come in the window and I'll be roasting and sweating in no time. But I was going to do a more holiday themed thing and look through some catalogs with you guys and, kind of give my opinions about that sort of thing. And I might still do that in the near future, this being a holiday weekend, though. I don't know how many people are even going to watch this because my decor videos don't usually get a lot of views to begin with. Yada, yada, yada. And of course, I'm also annoyed that I prematurely have to put away all my Charlie Brown Great Pumpkin kind of stuff that I didn't actually end up using because it's been warm and I didn't feel like sweating all over it. So save it for next year. It's fine. I have other bed sheets and things. So instead, today I was greeted by a video on a slightly different topic where some Professor Gloomy's wearing his autumn shirt, even though it's warm for this shirt. But it's due for the wash anyway, so I can sweat in it and not feel terrible that I'm not wearing it this evening or whatever. And I don't have to take away all my pumpkin decor yet, but that's temporary decor. So this video was I guess, semi-typical or typical bachelor trying to determine how best to recreate his bedroom space. And instead of seeking out a channel like mine where I talk about this kind of thing, he finds a more popular woman's channel where I wouldn't say she hates men or anything like that, but definitely doesn't necessarily vibe with the men's aesthetic, and we'll get into that. And this is an office space. This is not decorated like a bedroom, but it has to have bedroom elements in it because it's overflow pieces that, this has clothes in it, yes. Summer shirts mostly. And she had asked for inspiration photos of what he was looking for and kind of went from that. So obviously, if you already have kind of an idea what you want to do, I don't know why you necessarily need an intermediary, but for whatever reason, he, still went that route to get this kind of woman's advice. Maybe wondering what a woman looks for in a bedroom because he's trying to get a girlfriend. I'm speculating. None of that was really revealed, but some of my take on this was from that angle. But it did have what looked like a queen size bed, which most single guys don't necessarily need a bed that big. I mean, a twin bed is kind of small if you're on the bigger side, but a full size bed is probably big enough than a queen. But maybe it was a full size bed and I was reading it wrong, but it had two definite spots for pillows. To me, that says queen size. So going on that assumption, or without having a tape measure in his room. So the first thing was she was praising the idea of men in more modern times embracing dressing better, living well, that kind of thing, which is kind of what my channel is all about. So again, why you didn't find mine, I don't know. But of course, judging from the arguments that I have on YouTube with other creators and their viewers, when their viewers are legitimate, not, just bots, or especially when they're bots, I guess, I would say far less, in fact, men and women work at their appearance now than they did in, say, the late 90s, the early 2000s. There's plenty more of the next generations in terms of population versus, Gen X time in the late 80s and early 90s. And I'd say a lot of even those older ones going, Gen X and into the boomers have gotten lazier a bit. discuss, if they didn't want to be in their work clothes then, they certainly don't want to be in them on the weekend now. Yada, yada, yada. And the work clothes have all gotten more casual. Yada, I talk about this all the time, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But when we already started out with her trying to be positive and me being a little more negative, I suppose, but trying to be realistic too. So again, how many people watch my decor videos? Not many, and I cater to men. She mostly caters to women to get some overflow of men. So I don't know to argue that more are really working at it. We'll see how this video does. And if I use that as any sort of barometer, I don't know. I might argue, excuse me, I might argue that the ones who want to do better are trying to make it work on tighter budgets and things too, which of course I have videos about the cost of living and the value per wear and all that kind of thing. I just did a video about the no buy year, 2 or 3 weeks ago or whatever. So you can go back and watch that one and some other ones. Trying to make it work on tighter budgets and things for what it's worth, and tracking down craftsmanship and quality and the buy once mentality more than, all the disposable products and consumerism, blah, blah, blah. But some of that is, especially men, a lot of it's about the new gadgets and things. There's another woman's videos that I was watching where she opposes that in household stuff, time-saving devices that take up her time or space. Let me put that in. Sorry. The example she always gives is she bought this vacuum cleaner that's supposed to be a miracle thing, and it takes so long to clean the thing. There's this whole thing you have to go through instead of just swapping out the bag, that it's a nightmare to just use it for 2 hours or whatever. And same with this food processor kit or something thing she got that just adds extra steps to complicate what used to just be thrown in a bag. So anyway, skipping all that, but like I said, I have those other videos in the cost of living or whatever playlist. What is it? Where is it called? Where's my playlists? Lifestyle strategies. And this video is in that playlist too. So however you access that in reverse. Sorry. The first guy, so I thought there was going to be multiple rooms done. So I put the first guy, but it turns out there was only one guy. I thought it was 3 different ones, and I was wrong. So this guy has a big room and a big bed, right? Which I said, okay, I was expecting more dorm-looking space. I do this to myself. I write in my little silly language, and then I have to turn it back into English for these videos. I was expecting a more dorm-looking space with the robe hanging off the hook and such, but it's made clean. It's not, mom clean. Like this was like what my dorm room used to look like before I, started collecting junk for the next decades. I lost my train of thought from the bit about the college dudes whom can be slobs but had more money than me and still dressed crap and all that. I was thinking of Stradlater earlier, actually, before I even watched her video. Is that how you pronounce it? From Catcher in the Rye, the guy who always shaves twice. So when he goes out to meet the girls, he's like Mr. Suave. But then if he ever took them back home, it'd be a filthy pigsty, that kind of thing. Sorry. That's the problem with thinking of these things on the fly. And trying to read my own typing. His closets, okay, in the video, his closets are all organized already too, in which that he had a dresser, the layout, he had a kind of a bookshelf that he was using as kind of I didn't really look at it. It was like a shoe rack with some knickknacks. He had one framed baseball picture on one wall. He had curtains and 2 windows on the other wall. He had a standing lamp and 2 end table lamps on side tables, nightstands or whatever. So his closets are all organized already too. I think if he just adds a girlfriend, she will take over it no matter what he invests in decor, and the room will change anyway, was my joke. So the baseball, starting with the baseball photo and skipping some of the other stuff, sorry, that's not a bedroom piece to me. That belongs in an office more, you can't even see the other side, but it's Vincent van Gogh posters and maps. And she did show maps that are similar to the maps that are on that wall. And I did put photos of those in thumbnails way back when, that I think are in one of my decor videos. Or if you scroll back far enough in my community menu, they might be in there too. I might go back and add my Stradlater comment to her video later. So typically if you're meeting a gal, she's already going to know you like sports or presume you like sports, I suppose, unless you only date, hippie goblin witch chicks or something. Raggedy Ann was the aesthetic I was going to go with on that one. Yeah, in which case she might, not like the idea that you like sports. You may or may not find out if you're compatible, but she's still going to certainly have her ideas apart from just your bedding. Size of your bed may or may not be big enough, but I don't know anybody who usually gets a king size bed. I imagine if you're a professional athlete in football or basketball or something, you might need a bigger bed than a queen size. I don't know. Or if you're just a really, really, really large family of genetics, something. But basically, yeah, everything was, it was kind of a modular hotel symmetry. Again, like I said, made clean. We had the carpet wall to wall. We had the one shorter than this dresser. So how he fits all his clothes into only one dresser and one closet, I don't know. And then 2 little nightstands, like I said, and then one little kind of shoe shelf. So definitely pioneering minimalism, but not wanting to pioneer minimalism, kind of unintentionally minimalist, I guess. That was where it was kind of so yeah, if you wanted to continue with this symmetry though, because they had the identical nightstands, the identical lamps, that was a choice. The thumbnail that I chose was out of the photos that he submitted. I guess I'm kind of skipping around a little bit temporarily. Where's my picture? He had submitted 1 bedroom, and this was the bedroom that he had clearly modeled his thing after. Okay, so I'll come back to that. And so she didn't really pick up on that for some reason. But so if you run, if you're, I don't know if he was trying for this modular hotel symmetry, if that was intentional. If so, like you can just go Japanese in style then. Or if it just sort of happened this way, again, with the made clean, maybe he's just super OCD, or maybe he hires somebody and doesn't vacuum his own carpet at all. I don't know. Personally, I gave up maximalism years ago, so I wish I could have less stuff and be more like this clean, like I was in the dorm, without being so antiseptic a smidge, but also without just adding stuff for the sake of more stuff, which she then turns around right after I type that and says, "We are adding stuff just for the sake of adding stuff. Get over it." Okay, well, so we're at a loggerhead already again, but that's okay. But also I suggested, pick a theme without being so blatant about the theme, which then she turns around and does that as a joke with the children's version of a room where, you know, she used sports, but you could also do Spider-Man or Star Wars or even nautical or, you know, woodsy, which is the title in the thumbnail. But I don't know anybody who's done woodsy so much as some other ones. One of the commenters said dark academia, and woodsy was his thing. I think he said woodsy, I'm not sure. But so, like I said, yeah, I don't know if this person is intentionally minimalist or they just don't have a lot of stuff. You know, maybe they're fresh out of college and they haven't, again, accumulated anything yet. Don't know. So, like I said, we'll kind of come back to that. I actually hate wall-to-wall carpet, but I assume this could still be a rental or a condo thing where you're not really tearing out the carpet. You're just kind of going around it. She told him to get a rug and put the rug over the carpet, whatever. But I also noticed that this room has no TV or gaming system because, yeah, usually that dresser across from the bed is where the TV would be because most people do watch TV in bed, even if you don't do video games. But I didn't even notice a clock radio. Maybe it was there, and I didn't see it on the nightstands, though, which is where you usually put something like that. Maybe just uses the phone for an alarm. Don't know. So perhaps literally only spends 30 minutes in here whilst, you know, being awake per day, you know, up in the morning, off to work, home in the evening, changes the clothes, goes in the living room, watches the TV, goes in the kitchen, has the food, you know, I don't know, has an office where does any reading, any internet, I don't know. Again, how you fit all your clothes in that one. It had 2 doors. It was a decent sized closet, but the kind of closet that I mostly outgrew by the time I was mid-20s, I'd say. The one shoe rack thing looks like something I would want in the closet instead of against a wall. And then she agreed that it was kind of wimpy and not really a impactful piece. And I think her suggestion was just to take it and put it in some other room. But maybe here's where I speculate. Maybe the closet is crammed and closed to hide his shame. Maybe there is tons of stuff in there and we just can't see it. And at first I thought that the shelf thing was kind of a half size. And then I noticed later that it was a full, like 5 or 6 feet. So it is too tall to be a shoe rack. So it's another thing I would relocate for an office area or maybe saw off the top part and use it as the shoe rack in the closet or get something similar. Then she made a joke about her boyfriend has the same lamp. I don't have that lamp. That's okay for a reading nook, I guess, but it says more living room to me. Again, all the photos he submitted were living room photos, so I think that's kind of why he thought that lamp for getting dressed or whatever. Not entirely sure because he didn't have any easy chair or whatever in the corner to change even your shoes by the lamp. You'd have to sit on the bed, which is not near the lamp. So the lamp wasn't, yeah, I don't know. it migrated in, or was it in the thumbnail? Let's look at the thumbnail. The thumbnail cuts off. Okay, there was a lamp on the right side of the image to the bed that got cropped. There was a lamp, but I think it was on a table. And let me look at the uncropped one. Wrong one. Yeah, little table lamp. And instead of 2 nightstands, there was 1 nightstand on the open side and then a plant in the corner. And then there's 3 photos on the wall, not 2. I had to crop it down to 2. But overall, you're seeing most of that photo here. So if you were doing, you know, the baseball theme, I guess, in the 50s, your decoration would have just been the felt triangle that said Boston or Yale or whatever, right? Some such Harvard, I don't know. I guess you could, you know, get the chair and put a glove, a catcher's mitt or a fielder's glove, you know, on the chair with the ball in it, right? And have a little bit of, like she said, strictly non-functional piece. I guess most guys, and this guy's in urban area, he's in Boston, right? So they want less rustic in their homey look now. I take a long sigh in my. I mean, I would, redo some things. Well, there's another channel I watch where it's more about vintage aesthetic and antiques and things than this one. And she likes decorating with stuff like that, like the old felt banners and or making replicas of things that look like felt banners without actually having to be the true felt banner, that kind of thing. So I like her take on things a little bit more, but she also has a Victorian era farmhouse kind of thing going on, not a modern urban East Coast condo or apartment. So, like I've said on this channel before, not everything will work for every single space, no matter how much you try to shoehorn it. So, but then she made the joke about the globes and the maps, and she showed a map instead of globe. So I had to point out that globes are in fact round, not flat. Most male interests, where she was struggling to think of any, is actually variable depending upon environs and whom they're trying to impress or something. Oh, your personality might have something to do with it too, but we'll put that aside for now. Because you don't necessarily have to decorate to match your personality exactly, although that's usually most of the idea. But again, we're trying to elevate. Again, we're trying to not necessarily have a feminine touch, but have a room that doesn't look like I live in a business cubicle when I get home, So even if your personality is business cubicle, you don't need your house to look like business cubicle. And again, if you're dating goblin witch chicks versus yuppie shopaholics, I was going to get into a catty tit for tat with her. Two can play at that game, but then I just kind of. But I was saying, in fact, you could maybe add a globe if you want a curve, because she was saying men's spaces are very right angle, very rectangular, very square, very boxy. That's not just men's spaces, that's most spaces. Buildings are made that way typically for a reason now. So if you wanted to add a curve, you could add a globe. Although that and the map, again, if you see my old thumbnails, though both of those items still work better in an office. Again, this is an office. Here's some curves. These aren't in my bedroom either. They're here for the video, not for my personal delight as much, where I'd put them in a different room where more people would see them or something. I did think that on the one wall or the other wall, the wall above the dresser that doesn't have a TV particularly, that a hat rack might be okay. Like along with the baseball glove, he could have a couple vintage hats that he doesn't wear or whatever. Again, I did a whole video, and I was going to do a follow-up video, and I haven't. Maybe I will. The difference between like the more modern hats, like this is a cotton one, but it still has a simplistic, classic look, not a ton of words and extra stuff on it. So like a classic ball hat would work better, although a wool one would be better than a cotton one. I didn't get this for decoration. I got it to wear it, but I haven't worn it that much. But you could get clearly, again, and more antique kind of things that you don't want to wear them because they're going to fall apart or because they're kind of grimy. You don't want something too grimy if you're going to hang it up on your wall. But, Boston being an old team, there's bound to be old memorabilia that you could source. And she had kind of talked about sourcing wall art, but not collector's items, right? And signed jerseys and that kind of thing. Some people will put that in a bedroom. Again, most of that stuff to me says office space. It just depends on how you do it. And again, how much you want it to look like a children's room. A throwbacky kind of children's room or like an immature children's room, right? That's, kind of what I'm saying about the felt banners and things. It's kind of a throwbacky, which works better in a guest bedroom than your main living bedroom because you're not running a bed and breakfast, but you want it to look, fun for your guests or something, unless your guests are your 80-year-old grandparents or whatever. I don't know. Play with it, discuss. Right. So then skipping to color scheme, I should have really done the part 1, part 2, part 3 thing, right? And divided this up, but not this time. We're just going for it. So there was discussion about if he should paint the ceiling, and she was trying to give him a colorway example for that. So I just went off on color topic for a second. So the 2 colors he mainly was using was sage and forest, although I would say pine was closer than forest, judging, again, from that thumbnail picture. I keep clicking on the wrong thing. The thumbnail picture, it's darker. It's really hard to kind of even call that green as much as gray, whereas his bed cover was more green than gray, I would say. So I think pine green. She said forest, but I think pine might have been more accurate, but not olive. And also not emerald, not mint, and surely not lime. Maybe avocado would be a good color he could insert that he didn't have, which is somewhere between forest and olive-ish. He obviously, like I said this already, he obviously literally pretty much copied that one photo when he hung the green curtains that she told him to remove, and bought the bedspread to match the green curtains. But he didn't add the plants. And her big thing was, add some plants, add some plants, add some plants. So maybe the plants was the aspect of the inspiration photos that he sent her that he did not want. Same as me. I don't want any plants. I don't want any fake plants. No, pretty much ever. But that was, like I said, that was the only bedroom shot that he sent in. The rest were living rooms and at least one office space. Now that I looked back at them when I got near the end of the video, I went back and looked at the photos again that I had kind of ignored. So my question was, does he want a bedroom that's more like an office or a living room and not really a bedroom, which is kind of antithetical, but he wants to do more stuff in his bedroom, but he hasn't put any of that furniture in there. I got kind of confused there if he was really just trying to have a nice simple bedroom like the one in the one photo that I used for the thumbnail, or if he wanted his bedroom to be a living room, in which case, move in your TV, move in your couch. Or if you want it to be more like an office, again, move in a reading chair, move in, as she suggested, some books. Credit where credit's due. But she said books that you don't have to read, they're more there for decoration, which is one of those things that typically drives me crazy, especially when that other woman does it with her big farmhouse. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so, and then she said wall art, and I didn't really, like I said, the baseball thing is not art. It's a poster. It's a photo. It's definitely an office piece, but you could add baseball items, again, if that was your thing. Hey, ever heard of Norman Rockwell? Well, you won't be able to afford one of his paintings, but you might be able to get a reproduction thing that isn't a poster, and they have baseball stuff, or something that it's not cartoony. Like, I love Charlie Brown, but I don't have him hanging on my walls in my bedroom. Okay. There's a line. Again, there's the immature thing versus the vintage thing. If I had a Charlie Brown thing that wasn't a printed poster and it was more of a textured thing, that would work. And they do have stuff like that, but to me, Charlie Brown is meant to be two-dimensional. I don't really care for the three-dimensional Peanuts stuff. So getting that out of the way. So then she said to put a bench at the end of the bed. Again, changing your shoes kind of thing, I guess. But he had a big bed. So traditionally, my suggestion would be that's typically where you have your large chest for your extra storage, for your linens and your towel maybe, or your robe. Well, typically your robe might be wet or whatever, so you don't necessarily want it tucked away like that. But if you have a spare, you know, that's not your bathrobe, that's your flannel robe, that kind of thing. That would typically could go in your chest, so you don't have to have it hanging on the hook. Like I said, extra storage that I wish I could fit in my room, but adding this is also adding more right angles for sure. But especially since he already had dark furniture, you know, if you had that dark brown wood that doesn't work with any of my other furniture because it's all kind of that color. It could be a little too dark for his room since she's trying to lighten up the room, and that would be a heavy. Again, he doesn't have the Victorian farmhouse, which that would be an instant. It should come with the house, right? but otherwise, yeah, it's the kind of stuff that old bedposts are, you know, and such are made with the old, you know, that kind of thing. That old. It's not mahogany, is it? I forget the actual names of the different woods, but you'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. Really dark brown, not the lighter brown. Like, what do I have that's even mid brown in here? Nothing. Oh well, yeah, the guitar is even a little bit darker than that. That's still kind of a light brown, and that's kind of a light brown. This isn't Hobby Lobby. The edges. This dark of brown. None of this reddish stuff. That is the color of brown that those chests and things usually look best in. But again, that might be too dark. So that was my final point overall. So whatever that means. So 30 minutes. Okay, that was a bit longer than I thought it would be. Well, her video was 30 minutes, wasn't it? Yeah. So almost went minute for minute without meaning to. But it took me longer than 30 minutes to watch the whole thing and come up with all those thoughts. And I didn't even address everything watching hers and then commenting on every comment she makes because there's no reason to do that. I'm just adding my 2 cents. And so, like I said, once again, I think soon I might do a baseball, the state of modern merchandise video. How I, you know, I got the shirts on sale, so at least I didn't pay full price to be, you know, disappointed with the fabric or the texture or the sleeves, that kind of thing. And again, holiday decor. You know, if there's any demand, let me know. Who, all 3 of you who watch this, hopefully some more. As always, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the comments. Oh, my pants. I can show my pants that kind of match my shirt. I didn't tuck in my shirt, but that's another shade of brown. But I am wearing brown denim things that are not the typical color of denim brown that I like. But they do match the shirt. So. Okay, yeah, definitely leave me any questions and I'll try and give you a good answer. And I wish I had, you know, access to popping up all those fancy photos and things that other people do, but I don't do that. Here's something brown, but this has texture, but it's also more reddish. We're trying for a brown that doesn't have a lot of red in it. His was more gray, kind of not a color of brown I really liked, but I don't know where he got his furniture or why, if it was gifted or if it was just the best cheap option or what that filled the space. And again, apparently he didn't need that much of it, so who knows.